Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tisal Ameris and I'm from Tritunggal Senior High School, Semarang. During distance learning, I found a lot of difficulties in learning and following the school materials. It also happens to my friends, who find themselves hardly to catch the material even though we are skillful in handling the technology. This phenomenon makes me wonder why me and my friends as this generation having trouble in coping with distance learning. Therefore, this research will discuss about the readiness of Semarang Z generation in facing distance learning. Ladies and gentlemen, coronavirus disease 2019 is a global pandemic that first occurred in Indonesia on 2nd March 2020, with 2 cases, which then sharply increased with the mortality rate reached 5%. The high amount of COVID-19 in Indonesia urged the government to release a new policy about applying massive scale of social distancing on 31st March 2020. As the response to the new policy, the government of Central Java, Ganjar Pranowo, had given a leave for all students in Central Java since 16 March 2020, which then was continued with applying distance learning that is regulated in Permendikbud RI nomor 119 tahun 2014. Even some schools have decided to apply the distance learning system until the end of 2020 due to the sharp rise in the number of COVID-19 in Indonesia, especially in Semarang where the author lives. According to Document, the indicators of distance learning are the existence of an organization that arranges the independent learning method, lesson material being delivered through media, and also the indirect contact between teachers and students. Ladies and gentlemen, Stewart Gigan Hornberg differs the distance learning to 3 parts. First, independent in choosing or designing the materials with flexibility in the way the materials are going to be learned. Second, applying and utilizing technology that can produce massive good quality lesson materials so they can be used by the students at the same time at different places. Third, education concept of guided didactic conversation require the materials to become as interactive as possible, so it may interest the students to learn. Also, it is required to be in the form of self-instructive, so that students can learn individually and independently. Therefore, distance learning is relying on the independence of the students more than in the conventional learning. Z generation is a call for people who are born between 1995 until 2010. They can do multitask with the help of technology. One of the factors that differs this generation from the other generation is its mastery in the information and technology, according to Makova 2016. This phenomenon indirectly influences their personalities, with technology and the progress of time have big roles in forming humans' character that leads them to like something which has easy and instant result. Z generation, who likes to be in a rush and likes doing challenges, are easy to adapt in various situations and much more excellent in problem solving using technology. But Z generation also likes doing social activities. Therefore, they need to socialize in primary way despite being advanced in using technology. Senior high school students as the Z generation are expected to already be familiar with the use of technology in daily life. Despite being familiar, the author still quite often finds the difficulties as the result of the change from conventional learning to distance learning, especially in the outer social community. The difficulties vary. Some of them are from technical difficulties, and the others are mostly from students' understanding. Therefore, the author wants to find out the readiness of Semarang Z generation in facing distance learning by measuring and comparing the effectiveness of applying distance learning to Z generation and by digging some information about how Z generation respond to distance learning and utilize their potential. Ladies and gentlemen, this research is conducted using 60 respondents from senior high school students in Semarang. Cluster random sampling is used to choose the respondent randomly from 6 districts in Semarang, with a total of 10 respondents from each district. The questions are given in Google Form. The collected data will be calculated using TOPSIS, which is a method for multi-criteria decision that was first to be introduced by Yun and Huang in 1981. The concept of using TOPSIS is that the best alternative should have the shortest geometric distance from the positive ideal solution and should have the longest distance from the negative ideal solution. There are 4 criteria which include the easiness in socializing with friends, easiness in understanding materials, easiness in submitting tests, and easiness in interacting with teachers. The score is given between range 1 to 5, with 1 is considered very poor and 5 is considered very good. These steps are required in order to calculate the similarity to the worst condition, which then to be ranked to decide the most ideal solution. However, the author used the same way for all criteria as all of them have the same importance in distance learning. The author also finding out more about the difficulties in facing distance learning by doing depth interview using Zoom platform in order to know the readiness of Z generation as a technology generation in facing distance learning using their potential. The data began to be conducted from 1st October to 10 October 2020. From the data, it can be considered that conventional learning is better in all aspects rather than distance learning. Conventional learning excels in the aspect of easiness in interacting with friends, whereas distance learning excels in the aspect of easiness in submitting tests. However, the score of conventional learning never hit below than 3, which the overall quality can be ranged from quite good to good. On the other hand, the score for distance learning never reached 4, with the overall quality of distance learning can be ranged from poor to quite good. In fact, the score of distance learning for the easiness in understanding materials is only 2.43, which can be considered as poor. As a result, the similarity to the worst condition in conventional learning is higher than distance learning. It shows that conventional learning is still the most ideal learning method for Z generation in Semarang, with the difference between distance learning is 1. The criteria that has been used to decide the ideal solution is using the indicator of the effectiveness of a learning method, so conventional learning can be considered more effective than distance learning. From the interview, the author got to know that distance learning allows more distractions happen during the lesson, whether the distractions come from the outer like noisy environment, low internet connection and the unconducive situation to study at home, or even the distractions come from the lack of self-control to not open social media like YouTube, Instagram, etc. This fact shows that difficulties do not come from the lack of ability in handling the technology, but in the ways the Z generation responds to distance learning. In addition, the author found out that Z generation have the tendency to feel shy to ask about something or materials they do not understand. That is why even if the Zoom meeting is being held, there is no two-side interaction as it is expected. The student prefer asking privately through WhatsApp, yet still found difficulties in understanding the teacher. The convenience in technology is being utilized incorrectly, so most of the respondents state that they struggle more in understanding the material during distance learning rather than during conventional learning as the continuing result from the inappropriate response. Ladies and gentlemen, the conclusion of the research are: first, the comparison between both learning methods show that conventional learning is more ideal for Z generation. Therefore, it can be considered that it is more effective than distance learning. Second, distance learning is less ideal because of the lack of good response from Z generation toward distance learning. Thus, they cannot maximize their potential as generation of technology to face the distance learning better. The author suggests to conduct this research in wider range so more information can be known about how Indonesian students utilize the technology during distance learning. Moreover, it is expected for this research to be considered by teachers in creating more interactive learning for Z generation. Therefore, Indonesian students, especially in Semarang, can accept more suitable learning based on their characteristics as Z generation. Finally, these are references that the author used. Thank you for listening. See you next time. LPB 2020, sukses!